who's new. I wonder if you could just raise your hands if you're new to the South Denver Bitcoin meetup. This is the first one. Come on, don't be shy. Don't do this. We're not in. Yeah, there you go. I want to full. So that's awesome. That's awesome. We are in North Denver. That's right. That's right. So this is actually a huge upgrade from the place that we normally meet at, which is my office conference room, which is, it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. But this place is cool. Ours sometimes gets kind of hot, right? But I also wanted to introduce the space to everybody at the South Denver Bitcoin meetup. And the reason I wanted to do that is because it's awesome. The second reason is because they have an awesome mission, which is to kind of spur curiosity and adoption, which is very synonymous to that of the South Denver Bitcoin meetup. The space is a member-run Bitcoin community, essentially. There's currently, what, 81 members. And it's really the premier place to educate and collaborate, socialize, and accelerate freedom tech, i.e. Bitcoin. So while you're here today, I want you to look around the space. A lot has happened since last October. I can't believe it hasn't even been a full year. But the guys who started this did a phenomenal job, and they continue to do a phenomenal job. So if you have an opportunity to come to any of the events here, especially the ones, if you're new to Bitcoin, the ones for beginners are awesome. But the artwork is from all around the world, and this is like, really beautiful art. It is all for sale, and if you were to purchase any of it, you would get some of that would go to the space, okay? So while you're here and before you leave, if you get an opportunity, go upstairs and check out the co-working spaces because they're awesome too. Actually, I come down here like every now and then just because they've got cubicles up there and I don't have to hear anybody and Gene doesn't know where I'm at. So at any rate, it's a beautiful space. And so as we leave tonight, I ask you one thing, let's leave it as we found it. So please, throw your stuff in the garbage for us and let us, so we can get out of here in a timely way. And then a quick shout out to tonight's caterer. So the pot pies, first of all, did you guys like the pot pies? They are awesome. Legacy Pies is this like ma and pa shop here in Denver, and they accept Bitcoin for catering. So if you have a catering event and you want some really awesome pies, and they even have handheld ones and little mini treat ones that are awesome. So, and then another shout out to our other caterers who are not here tonight or not providing tonight, but Bono's Barbecue. I've got them currently accepting Bitcoin to pay for catering, but Caesar, the guy who's the office manager or the restaurant manager, is now going to incorporate it into their point of sale. So pretty jacked about that. The Butcher, or ODBs, which is right down the street, they don't accept it at point of service, but they'll cater, and they're great food. The Butcher Block Cafe, which is also north end of town. There you can go, and not the one that's real close here, but further north. And then, of course, the big one that's recently dropped was Steak and Shake. Yesterday was the 3-month anniversary of Steak and Shake accepting Bitcoin, and if you have not gone there, if you're a Bitcoiner or if you have a Bitcoin Lightning wallet and you haven't gone there and had the experience of paying in Bitcoin, it is pretty damn cool. It is way. So I would say just please try and patronize people that accept Bitcoin. And just while we're on that theme, Esteban, if you just real quick stand up and just tell everybody what you do and the fact that, you now accept Bitcoin, at least from me. Yeah.
My name is Esteban. I'm a master electrician from electrical contracting company. And because of Mark, he got me accepting some Bitcoin. So excited to start that.
Yes. The important thing is he's a really good electrician. And yeah, he really is easy to work with. So, and reliable, dependable guy. Okay. So The South Denver Bitcoin Meetup's mission is, number one, to spur curiosity and adoption. Number two, through education and networking. Number two, to jumpstart a Bitcoin circular economy, which we do a little bit of that at each meetup. And for that, I'm going to have actually Nathan come up, AKA Luby, and he's going to kind of do a raffle for us and tell you guys a little bit about things that he has to offer for sale. Okay?
Cool. Thanks, Mark. First of all, did we hit record back there? Awesome. Cool. So thanks for coming, everybody. One of our missions here at South Denver Bitcoin Meetup is to create a circular economy, like Mark said. So I hate monopolizing the stage for most of the meetups. So just like Esteban plugged his electrical business, like if anybody has anything that they would like to plug, we can do that like towards the end of the presentation. But I wanted to kickstart things because we're doing a raffle today because me and my girlfriend, Michelle, and our friend, Dan Gilbert, we all actually met at the halving party, last year? Year before, and we started Talos, which is a beef tallow-based skincare brand, which we took over that table back there. If you have any questions about us, we use all grass-fed, thank you, Rob, grass-fed, grass-finished beef tallow and super simple ingredients, saying no to big skincare. And we're giving away this cutting board here, which my girlfriend Michelle also does some woodworking on the side. So locally made in Canyon City, that's what's taken over that table back there, also for sale. We accept Bitcoin on everything, and so if you'd like to support us, that would be great. I have a roll of tickets here, and so if you enjoyed some food and drink tonight and send a donation to South Denver Bitcoin Meetup, you will get a ticket. If you buy a Talos product, you'll get another ticket. If you buy any part pines, which is the woodworking, you'll get another ticket. If you buy Rob's book, you'll get another ticket. And if you donate to the space, $10 or more, you'll get another ticket. And as you can see, there's not that many people in the room. So if you want to win a cool little handmade cutting board, we're going to be giving it away to somebody tonight. So, cool.
Just so you know, the QR codes that you see here, they are not Lightning QR codes. At least these aren't. Okay, you have to use your phone, and you have to use a Lightning wallet. And some of you may not even have a Lightning wallet, so it's not fair. But we're trying to get people in the habit of using their Lightning wallet. If you have the strike log, like you do, Esteban, there's on the bottom, there's a choice between using Bitcoin or using cash. If you funded it with cash, which you may not have done, okay, you have to link it to your bank account. You can pay without worrying about capital gains or anything like that. I'm going into the weeds a little too much. But you can use your phone to scan this, and then it will take you to a place where you can use your Lightning wallet. So I anticipate we won't be able to get many people to use this because a lot of people here I know are new, and so you don't have Lightning wallets, and that's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, we'll accept fiat tonight, absolutely. We're happy the new people are here. So cool. So I will pass around the QR code for the donation for the space. The Talos QR code is back there if you decide to buy anything. Here's the food and drink support. And Rob's book has a QR code too somewhere, right?
It's going to come up at the end of the night. We're going to have a QR code for Rob after his presentation. This is his book. It is an awesome book. It's a best-selling book on Bitcoin mining, and it's written in a way that even a guy like me can understand it. So it's really worth. If you're into Bitcoin and you get to that stage where you think, oh, what is this mining thing? This is the book for you. So.
And so if you buy any one of those, 5 things, just raise your hand and we'll get you a raffle ticket, okay? And we'll draw at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
And just to be clear, one more time, this one here, which is the space, is that the space, the one you've got? That is a Lightning QR code. The other ones are not Lightning QR codes. So this one and the one for the food is basically you have to use your camera and then it takes you to a Lightning wallet. Okay. It is a web page, yeah. Okay. Let me go back here. Okay, so I'm excited about tonight's topic. What the FUD? The mainstream media has done their very best, especially over the last 4 years, to mislead the public about Bitcoin. Money for drug dealers, money for money launderers, money for cyber criminals, money that will boil the oceans by 2020, et cetera, et cetera. Well, tonight we're going to basically kind of fact check that a little bit And as excited as I am about this topic, especially for new people, I'm even more excited about who is presenting it. So Rob Warren, the guy who wrote this book, the Bitcoin Miner's Almanac, has presented for us before, and he just has this incredible knack of making the complex easy to digest, easy to understand. So without further ado, Mr. Rob Warren, if you'd please come up and take it away, and I'll switch to your presentation here. Hold on a sec. Oop, got to go back to the first slide, right? Okay. And then here's your clicker.
Cool. How is everybody? All right, before we jump in, just so that we kind of know who's in the audience, by show of hands, who is like die-hard, hardcore, I am a Bitcoin maximalist? Wonderful. Who has some fears? Some fears. We can be honest here. It's just us. Who has some uncertainties? And who has doubts? Good. I was thinking about the best way that we could start this tonight, and I have to tell you, first off, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for the invitation, and it's a blast to be able to talk on this subject. And it's a pleasure to be here at the space, the premier place for Bitcoin in the greater Denver kind of metro region. This is where it's happening, so this is really exciting to be able to present this, What the FUD, wonderful title, to you here tonight at the space. So first off, who is this guy? This is me, Robert Warren. I currently am the head of research and education at Bitcoin Park, which is a community of builders and entrepreneurs and creators in the Bitcoin space that operates physically out of both Nashville and Austin, but has membership globally. So my sort of prior universe has been very, now my work is more sort of generally focused on the Bitcoin space, the Bitcoin protocol. In a previous life, it was far more focused on really the mining industry. So I authored a book called The Bitcoin Miner's Almanac, and have previously worked for companies like Riot Platforms, started a privacy-oriented hosting company called Distributed Hash, where we did a bunch of early research on the space, trying to figure out how the hell do you run these weird machines. Worked for a company called Upstream Data, which makes fantastic off-grid, particularly like oil and gas-oriented kind of hashing hardware. And really started as a Bitcoin Magazine contributor, just kind of doing creative things with mining and writing and trying to figure out what the hell was going on, and could I share it with other people so that they could figure out what the hell was going on. So, who has seen this face before when you started to talk to somebody about Bitcoin? Wonderful. Also, this is going to be, I was playing with some of the advanced AI tools in creating slides, and I was just enamored with them. They're very cheesy, but we're going to roll with it. So just expect more of this. But just know that you too, if you pay for like the Google Premium subscription, can create slideshows as decadent and ridiculous as what you are about to see. So what is FUD? FUD is fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? That is an AI-generated image. But I want to turn it on its ear a little bit, because the way that we talk about FUD often in the Bitcoin space is that somebody is FUDding our favorite puppy. What do you mean you don't love it? It's not your favorite thing. It's my favorite thing. Like, you're just FUDding. You're full of fear and uncertainty and doubt. And we don't like that here as the Bitcoin maximalists. But I think that's a bit of a closed-minded view, to be honest with you. Because being fearful or uncertain about things or doubtful about things is the most preservationist thing that you can do as a mammalian type thing that walks on two legs and has to survive and not get eaten by lions for millennia. It's totally normal to be fearful and uncertain and doubtful of things. So I want to turn it on its ear a little bit. Here's an example of FUD. Also AI generated. A lonely, sad girl in a field going, should I marry him? Yeah. You don't know. I mean, You get married. I hope all of you who are married are in wonderful and happy and fulfilling marriages. But you don't know. You got to go through the thing and marry the person and work on the happiness. And then you figure out, like, oh, I really have to, like, work for this too? Like, I work for the job, and now I got to work for the, like, yeah. But you have some hesitation or some fear or uncertainty in the lead up to it. That's totally normal. That's a totally normal human thing to experience and feel as a large life choice that has very, very severe consequences. Sad, slightly overweight guy. I could never get healthy again. Believe it or not, also AI. Yeah. Anyone who's over the age of 30 has gone through the various waves of metabolism and has had some variety of thought of, could I really run again? Should I go hiking more? Could I get back out on the soccer pitch? I don't know why you're British in that scenario. Can I get out on the soccer pitch and play like I used to? Yeah, there's fear or uncertainty. Can I do the thing? Can I get back into shape if I'm not where I want to be? Yeah, everybody has felt that. Sad corporate lady. Also AI. This one might be able to pass. I don't know, something about the skin. Something about the dead eyes, but maybe it's because she doesn't like her job, right? Am I in a job that I don't like? Do I really want to be in this thing? Is it worth it? We don't tell somebody who's asking us, like, oh, should I marry them? Hey, you're fudding it, bro. Like, just don't fud it. Like, it's great. Marriage is great. Oh, you're out of shape? Dude, quit fudding it. Like, just get off your ass. Like, go, like, sun your balls, sit in the sunlight, and you're great. Like, you're a true Bitcoiner in 20 minutes. Is it worth it? Don't fud it. Just, like, go be fun employed. Like, you're fine, bro. It would be absurd for you to say any of those things to somebody. You would be considerate to them if they were fudding under these scenarios. And here's the realest one. It's your grandmother, and she's saying, should I put generational wealth into BTC or SHIB for my kids? And it seems silly to us, because obviously this is a Bitcoin-focused space, but it's a realistic thing that people are thinking through. Because what they're exposed to is not what you're exposed to, and their knowledge base doesn't start where your knowledge base starts. And frankly, if you started in Bitcoin kind of long enough ago, I think in a lot of ways it was a lot easier because the camps were really clearly organized. And sure, we dealt with the block size war and we dealt with Ethereum and then the launch of every other altcoin. But it was a lot clearer. There was Bitcoin. Yeah, obviously. Well, maybe I'll look at this side project. Nah, that seems ridiculous. In a lot of ways, this is, while we might kind of laugh at it if we've been in the space long enough, these are realistic questions that people that we love are having. And so if we go to them and we go, oh, well, you're ridiculous or you're dumb or you're just fudding it, we're kind of missing the point. We're kind of missing the point that they're experiencing things that are very different from the things that maybe we were experiencing when we got into Bitcoin. And they're asking questions that are within the context of the things that they understand. So really, FUD is the rule, not the exception. Everything starts from a place of FUD. Oh, that was also AI, same photo. We're cooking now, guys. Bitcoin has died over 475 times. So now we're talking about fudding Bitcoin. You can go and search Bitcoin Obituary's website and you can see the running list of them, and it's wonderful. And we kind of treat it as passe, right? It's a joke. Bitcoin has died. Yeah, it's died. Like, chalk it up. Like, X days since last accident. Like, X days since last death. It's a joke. Because the protocol keeps kind of ticking on. Who's familiar with what this is? This is mempool.space. So if you don't already use or adore or admire mempool.space, my personal belief, the best, most informative block viewer. Across the top, you can see blocks that have already been mined and the respective pools that have mined them. Foundry on a bit of a run there. And then you can see on the left-hand side, this would be kind of what we're talking about, the mempool. If you talk about submitting your transaction to the mempool, your transactions are there, and it's saying, well, sort of based on what's in the mempool, this is what we estimate the following blocks to be like. But it's proof of life. It's showing us that the thing has not died yet, right? Bitcoin is very much alive. Why does Bitcoin survive? That's really the question that we should be asking. Not diving deep into the FUD or the questions or the anxiety that people are having necessarily, but trying to answer a more fundamental question. Why does it survive? And every day that it survives and continues to survive, this question becomes almost a little bit less relevant. You know, it's easier to FUD something when it's 5 years old, a little harder to do it when it's 10 years old, a little harder to do it when it's 15 years old, and by the time it's 20, you're like, well, I guess it's here. So, this one is also AI, which is why if you actually try to read it with an eye for detail, you will give yourself an aneurysm. But why does Bitcoin survive? Okay, because the network has certain characteristics. It's decentralized, it is open source, and it is permissionless. It obviously has other characteristics, but these are the ones that are kind of most pertinent to what we're talking about, and these are the characteristics to specify of the network. Not when we're talking about necessarily Bitcoin, the asset. If you're talking about Bitcoin, the asset, you're talking about the divisibility of it. You're talking about the immutability of it. You're talking about the fungibility of it. You're talking about the monetary characteristics. Now, those kinds of characteristics of Bitcoin are not really threatened by what we would think of necessarily as attack vectors. Now, of course, some are, right? But they're always embedded in another kind of attack, and that attack is some kind of network level attack. And it's the design characteristics of the network itself which are super, super protective for Bitcoin, really organized around this idea of a decentralized peer-to-peer network. Decentralization, open source, permissionless. This is also AI. We changed themes. I don't know why it chose to change themes, but we're gonna roll with it. I was looking for a background that was kind of like survival, and it gave me this, I don't know how you would describe that, it's like a cave woman, but it's like the white-haired dude with the claws and the, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it, but we're gonna roll with it. We're rolling with the AI tonight. So the next question is, okay, so if it has certain design characteristics to it, it was designed in such a way that it would not die. It hasn't died. Well, what are the kinds of attacks that could kill it? Why was it designed in that way to protect against? It was designed to protect against something. It wasn't designed just in a bubble. It wasn't some single person that just kind of spit it out as much as Satoshi launched the white paper and then the code. The second that that went out, other people started working on the code, and they started hardening it so that it would continue to provide this protection against very, very specific types of attacks. So let's try to understand what those attacks are, because we don't want to FUD. We don't want to be fearful, we don't want to be uncertain, and we don't want to be doubtful of what's going on. And the best way to resolve that to the affirmative or the negative is to actually understand how the hell you could kill the thing. So we're going to run through a couple of attacks. How's everybody feeling? Are we all on the same page? We're going to go through some specific attacks so that you can wow your friends with the ways in which you could possibly kill Bitcoin, but shouldn't. And once the camera's off, I'll tell you a fun secret about all this information that I already told Mark. It will be sort of an informational giveaway of sorts because we are rocking with so many giveaways, Nathan. First kind of attack, 51% attack. Who's heard of a 51% attack? What is a 51% attack? It is an entity briefly rewriting Bitcoin's blockchain, but cannot steal coins or change rules. Okay, understand the characteristics of the attack, right? So I could rewrite the blockchain. What does that mean? It is prohibitively costly, self-defeating, discouraged by Bitcoin's decentralized design and economics incentives. Okay, what the hell does it actually mean in real life? What it means in real life is you have the green chain. This is the blockchain. The blockchain is not a perfectly organized space. It is designed to be an adversarial space. By nature, everyone who is mining for the right to put a block on the blockchain and then have that block be built on by additional miners. When you mine, you are rewarded proportionally to the amount of hash power that you have. Now, we can get into pools and we can get into all the other vectors there. We can kind of take it to that level as far as like questions and concerns are occurring, right? But fundamentally, what a 51% attack says is that if you have the odds of hitting 51% of blocks, you now are in an advantageous position to make it disproportionately possible for people to settle transactions in a non-adversarial way. Now let's break this down and make this more human. We're adding blocks to the blockchain, everyone is getting rewarded, everyone is hashing. Somebody gets to 51% of blocks. and they decide that they want to cause chaos. Maybe they don't like the person who just put a block on the blockchain. They are instead going to mine on top of the prior block, replace it, and try to do what's called orphaning. They're going to orphan the block, which is that they're just going to follow their own version of the blockchain. Why would they do that? Because statistically, they say that, oh, well, I have this statistical advantage, so I win the game 51% out of 100 times, 51 out of 100 times. Why does it fail in practice? It fails in practice because you don't want to kill the golden goose. Every time you hit a block, you are rewarded in two ways. New Bitcoin is issued, you win the block subsidy, and you get fees. You settle transactions. That's what you make. If you cause chaos on the blockchain, you're pooping in the pool. You don't, we're just gonna throw all kinds of metaphors and analogies out here. You don't kill the golden goose. It is not, there's not a strong incentive to necessarily want to kill the thing that is paying you money every time you solve a block and add it to the blockchain. Now, this is not from like, there are game theoretic reasons why it becomes proportionally harder. But fundamentally, it all boils down to the idea that the risk is not worth the reward because miners are constrained by the energy they have to put in to mine a block. Energy has a cost. A business has a cost. The physical hardware has a cost. So they are incurring externalities to try to execute this attack. And if the only thing I get while I'm burning, in some cases, tens of thousands of dollars of electricity an hour, if the only thing I get is a 51% advantage, that's not a great reason to kill the thing that is paying me and continues to pay me. So it's disadvantageous. It has not happened historically. Smaller versions of these attacks have potentially happened, but there is a strong incentive to not indicate that you are doing some kind of attack, whether it's like block withholding or whether you're being kind of a bad actor in the mining space. There was an incredibly strong incentive to not tell anybody. Because the second that you do, you run the risk of people basically detaching from you and you cause all those sort of network or nodal issues. So there's a strong incentive to not kill the golden goose and also not to get caught if you are cheating. The nature of cheating that you could do is very, very marginal. All right, what's a block subsidy attack? This isn't really an attack per se. When we talk about block subsidy, we're talking about the way in which miners get paid. And you may hear people say, well, how are miners going to get paid in 100 years when the block subsidy is continuing to reduce? Now, the way to visualize this is as follows. This is the issuance schedule of Bitcoin. Every 4 years, we have a what? A halving, which means, hooray, miners get screwed. Like, hope you figured out your cost structure, or hope price went up. Every 4 years, we know this is going to happen. It's in the code. And so people have come and they have said, well, you know what's going to happen? That subsidy is going to keep dropping. And as it keeps dropping, proportionally, miners are losing the amount of Bitcoin that they're going to make every 4 years by 50%. There's going to become a time when they're not making enough, and then they're going to sneak in, and they're going to destroy the blockchain. Now, why would this be a legitimate argument? It would be a legitimate argument if you thought this was the only way that miners made money. The idea, as outlined in the white paper, is that as your subsidy decreases, the amount of Bitcoin is going down. We have a natural assumption that the price of Bitcoin is going to go up. But I can't control that. If I run a business, I want to control something. I want to control my costs. It's not a good way to run a business to say, let's just hope the price goes up. The idea, as outlined in the white paper, is that fees, the space in the blocks, will become more valuable. But people say, that's not acceptable. I don't think it's going to be worth enough. Well, what is it missing? It's missing the fact, and this is Riot's Corsicana site, that's 400 megawatts. What it's missing is that the blockchain isn't the only thing that pays miners. Every Bitcoin mine is not just generating hash that it's being paid for, which is represented here in the subsidy, and then additionally the fees that get paid every time you transact. This facility makes money when it stays on, because the grid operator needs to make sure that there's load. Sometimes they make money when they turn off, because the grid operator needs to make sure that consumers in Texas have access to reliable electricity. It's 400 megawatts. Instead of calling on a 400 megawatt peaker plant to spin up and provide voltage to the grid, it's way easier to call these guys up and go, hey, could you shut down for 2 hours today? That's not free. It's a business transaction. And it's why these businesses are able to do really interesting things when it comes to their costs of mining, because there are other ways that they are providing valuable services. It's not obvious. What is this? This is an early version of a hash generator. Ed Ingve, who runs Renegade Oil and Gas, I believe. On one side of that is an engine, which you're looking at with the yellow as an engine. And then on the far side is a row of Bitcoin miners. If you had the simple model would state, well, I just consume natural gas. That's what he's doing. He's on an oil field. I consume natural gas. I run it through my gen set. I get electricity on the back end of it. I consume it with my Bitcoin miners, and I make money. That's it. That's the full equation. If that was the full equation, then this subsidy FUD would be legitimate, because you would be constrained by how cheaply you can run and operate this thing. But that's not the case. The case is that he doesn't own just one well. He has a portfolio of wells. Some of these wells are operational. Some of these wells are non-operational. They're non-performant. What do you do if you're sitting on a heavy, non-performant asset? Well, if you're in oil and gas, you don't have a lot of options. You can forfeit it to the state fund, you can shut it in and write it off, or you can monetize your minerals. Now, if I'm thinking on a portfolio basis, what do I want to do? Do I want to start shedding my assets and dropping them in the state fund and pissing off all the regulators? Because I'm already having to deal with them anyway. Where you're in the oil and gas world in Colorado, for God's sake, you know? Like that, you got to deal with a lot. No. You want to monetize your minerals. And so what do? In some sense, you're defraying external costs. You're defraying the cost of shutting in. You're defraying the cost of the lost capital of the minerals beneath the ground. If this was in certain sites, say in Texas, where the gas coming out of the ground wasn't just natural gas, but it was also heavy oil, called integrated gas, it's the case that the oil is the thing that you make money on. If you've checked the price of natural gas recently, it's not great. If you're not sitting next to a pipeline, you don't have a lot of great options, because you can't pull a truck over to get your natural gas. So what do people do? They vent it, they flare it, they dump it in the atmosphere, they burn it. In what business is it a good model to burn your product so that you can get another product out of the ground? I mean, you do it because the natural gas is a liability for the oil production. The oil is what makes you the money. Natural gas is too much of a pain in the ass. So, vent it, flare it, be done with it. Do regulators like that? That's when you all go, no. No, regulators don't like that. And they're getting increasingly good at spotting when you're doing it. Turns out you can spot from satellites who some of the worst offenders are in venting and flaring, because natural gas is odorless and colorless, and screw it, like nobody can tell, it's just going in the atmosphere. Well, not anymore. Well, if I have the opportunity to monetize something, it's not just a low-cost product, but fundamentally a liability on my business's balance sheet, am I going to do it? Heck yes. That is not included in all of the block subsidy FUD. All of these utilitarian purposes that Bitcoin mining can serve in various parts of the energy industry. The quantum attack. You have to say it in a heavy voice. Is a quantum attack potentially real? Yeah, 100%. Is it clear how soon it is, how soon it's coming? No, not at all. This one has obviously been very, very primo in hearts and minds of late because of innovations in quantum computing. Let's understand the actual attack surfaces. There's two things that you can do to really screw with Bitcoin if you have a quantum computer. And they're two very real things. you can attack. Well, does anybody know what this is actually? Nice. You're going to say that too? Nice. So your ECDSA, it's elliptic curve cryptography, and it is what protects, it's the cryptography that protects the relationship in your public-private key pair. So when you hold your own keys, you have a secret. The fact that you hold that secret, if somebody had it, they would essentially have the solution to this puzzle. Without it, the odds of them guessing the solution to this puzzle is the equivalent of picking an atom somewhere out of the universe and being able to steal all of your money. A quantum computer poses a legitimate threat to breaking elliptic curve cryptography. If it does that, the nature of that threat, and thank God we have Hunter Beast in the region, in the area, who's been a big advocate for quantum resistance, and more recently, Jameson Lopp has just announced pre-BIP, but a potential BIP, his proposal on how to deal with quantum threats, which is a little bit different. You have a very real risk. Now, does it mean that you are at risk of having your keys sniped, or you are at risk of having your keys sniped? No, there's a hierarchy. There's a very clear kind of hierarchy for who is at greatest risk. A large known wallet is always going to be a larger honeypot for somebody to attack, as opposed to you, random person who has transacted with X number of Bitcoin over the last Y number of years. So you, unless anyone in here runs an exchange and has a very large hot wallet, you are not necessarily at risk. Realistically, what is primarily at risk outside of large holders or large treasuries are Satoshi's coins. And Satoshi's coins were primarily paid out in mining rewards, which at the time were 50 Bitcoin per block reward. So it's not the case that if somebody starts to crack Satoshi's keys, you're going to see everything move all at once. It's more likely the case that you would start to see old mining rewards move, and you would have this question of, is that a Satoshi coin? Is it not a Satoshi coin? Hunter has proposed a really interesting project called Satoshi Shield, which is essentially a digital watchtower that basically monitors the blockchain and says, if we have some sort of statistical guess about which UTXOs are Satoshis, and it's not 100% clean cut, obviously. If we see those move, you shoot the flare in the sky, right? Like, what's the line about Gondor? Something about the, yeah, that's when we light the beacons. So there's not currently a solution that has been implemented, but there is a lot of heavy-duty brain power that is working on this precise problem. Also of note, this is not just a Bitcoin problem. If a quantum computer breaks ECDSA, none of your passwords are safe. None of your banking information is safe. Nothing. So if I have the evil control of the quantum computer, it's really contingent on where they decide to point it that day, right? Do they want to go crack passwords, or do they want to go crack private keys? It is a universal problem, and it's also being worked on by NIST, the Institute of Standards, right? So this is a known problem. There's massive impetus to solve it. It is not a solved problem. Second piece, SHA-256. This is the lesser of the quantum attacks, which is that somebody, should you have the ability to factor large numbers really quickly, quantum computers suck at factoring large numbers. I think the largest number a quantum computer has ever factored was like 21. Which is hilarious. It's like when you ask like an AI how many like R's are in the word strawberry, and it's like, strawberry has 3 R's. I'm like, wow, that's amazing, you actually did it. Like most of the time it's like, strawberry has 2 R's, here's what they are. Yeah, that's kind of what we're dealing with. This kind of attacking the hashing algorithm, would be essentially somebody being able to crack blocks prior to somebody solving them. This is far less likely, because you have the time constraint. I don't have a time constraint if I want to go crack Satoshi's coins. If I want to crack a block reward, the next time somebody finds a block, I have to start all over again. So this is a far less likely risk factor, but still a risk factor. And quantum computers, at least for the time being, suck at factoring things. So we're relatively safe on that. Now, that being said, I do think quantum computing is one of the most modern and legitimate risks that we're facing, right? How are we feeling on time? Are we cooking? Are our brains engaged? Good. As the kids say, let him cook. A Sybil attack. Not even, I want you to understand this, but I don't want you to even consider this as being something that is really within the realm of an attack vector. The reason I want you to understand what a Sybil attack is because Bitcoin is intentionally designed to be Sybil resistant. So it's kind of baked into the pie, so to speak. It involves flooding Bitcoin's network with fake nodes to isolate targets. That's called an eclipse attack, which is a version of a Sybil attack. But proof of work node diversity limit its impact to localized disruptions. Here's a visualization of it. I'm a visual learner, if you couldn't tell. Also, these are not AI. I know we were ripping on the AI train for a little bit, but we have moved on to actual informative things. Your node, Sybil node, honest node. What is a Sybil attack? A Sybil attack is where you have some unscrupulous individuals flooding the network. And if they flood the network, they can do things like trick you into thinking certain things are valid or invalid. Now, we're in the game of kind of relative statistics of how many fair or unfair actors are there in the game, so to speak. This problem is by and large solved in the way that core developers navigate things like the communications policies. When a node stands up, it has to decide which other nodes in the network it's going to talk to. It has to have certain constraints around the nature of that communication because you don't want to have DDoS issues. It has to decide how many connections should I have? How do I validate who's telling me the truth, who is not? Because this thing was built in such a way that it is designed to assume that everybody wants to kill you. So it was not built to be Facebook's servers or Meta's servers. It was designed to not die. And the way that you don't die is you design a decentralized system that is able to survive against these kinds of attacks, which means that everything from the single way that a node, when it stands up, and a node can stand up at any point in time, is entirely permissionless for you to participate in the network, you have to know who your peers are. It even gets down to the level where when you are connecting to peers in the code, there are limits on certain IP ranges that you're allowed to connect within. Because potentially, think about it from the attack side, if you have somebody attacking from certain tranches of IP addresses, what they could theoretically do is, and this is kind of a visualization of what's called an eclipse attack, you can isolate or target a single node and make them think that you are the network when you are in fact not the network. You are trying to be mischievous. What's a real-life application of this? I run a large exchange hot wallet. I don't. If you're watching online, please don't believe that. If I know that exchange has one node, which they wouldn't, they would have multiples, and their internal controls would have solved for this problem. If I know they have one node, and I know how to connect to that node, and I'm a bad actor, I can try to surround that node, eclipse that node with other bad acting nodes. So that what can I do? I can trick that node into doing something where it will lose money. It will essentially send Bitcoin in a way that would not be recognized by the rest of the network. There are, of course, other issues of creating unintentional forks in the network, your own versions of the code, not having miners. There's all these other ways to protect against network splits, which would be bad. That being said, we have seen it in the history of Bitcoin. We saw it in the block size wars. We saw it with the split of BTC and BCH and the user-activated soft fork. The result of that was that people just fundamentally wanted to play by different rules of the game. A Sybil attack is when you are trying to trick somebody in thinking that you are playing by the rules of the game when you're not playing by the rules of the game. DDoS attack. Again, another one that is not going to happen in our lifetime, has never happened, and will not happen again, right? This is kind of the base code stuff that core developers have solved for. A DDoS attack is me making a bunch of queries to your node that don't actually go anywhere. You call back and there's nobody at home. I had another image that was a lot more sensible to people who are not like gigabrain technology people. But fundamentally, if you are making requests of a server and the server calls back to try to make a connection with you and you ghost it, now we've got the Zoomers understanding this. At a certain point in time, this becomes an attack vector. You're creating a liability to that, and you can crash this thing because it's timing out. It doesn't ever get an acknowledgement that what you told it, you actually heard it. This cannot happen in Bitcoin, short of like a full takeover of the internet, right? But it is something that Bitcoin was designed to not be subject to not die because of. Who thought all those attacks were very technical? Good, because that was the technical part. Now we can rip through the non-technical part. So really, there are two ways that you can attack Bitcoin. The technical side. But Bitcoin is technical by nature. They know what's coming. These are the things that you can kind of design for. There are certain things that you can't design for, which is the social side of things. And that is another entirely legitimate attack surface, which I think we should understand from a more sort of strategic way. Because we definitely experience it. Anybody who's been in Bitcoin for more than a couple of years has experienced some of these attacks, but we don't necessarily think about them in the sense of, oh, this is going to kill Bitcoin. But that's precisely what some of these attacks were designed to do. First one is a whale attack. I have a lot of Bitcoin, I dump it, I drop the price. Why doesn't it work? Who knows about the bear whale? Really? This is wonderful. This is lore. This is like big Bitcoin lore. 2014, a whale holding 10,000 Bitcoin puts a limit order in for $300 per Bitcoin. $9 million at the time. That doesn't math. 30,000? There we go. The bear whale. Everyone is on the forums freaking out because they see this limit order come in and it pins the price. So what do people do? It becomes a bit of a meme. You jump on it, you're gonna buy Bitcoin. You're gonna stop the bear whale from winning because they're selling tens of thousands of Bitcoin. This is what the price did when the bear whale struck. It's floating at 320, it pins to 300, and the bear whale was defeated. This is like very old school, very nerdcore Bitcoin lore. $9 million sold into the market. Which is funny because it would be $3 billion now, or 3 point something billion. So I wonder what the bear whale's doing. Anyway, it didn't work. Because what did the price do literally 6 hours later? It recovered. If you have Bitcoin, you sell it, you're trying to FUD it, the only thing you can do is drop the price. And then what happens once the price is dropped? Yeah, it goes back up. That's right. But probably the most, it was a time in Bitcoin when it was like the greatest lore of somebody selling into Bitcoin, the bear whale. So tell all your friends you now have access to 11-year-old Bitcoin lore. Regulatory attack. This is a very legitimate one. We experienced this personally, even if we were being gaslit about it for the better part of 3 to 5 years. And we experienced it with our very own, who is this? Caitlin Long, what's the name of her bank? And what was she trying to get? She was trying to get a Fed Master. Why couldn't she get a Fed Master account? She didn't know. She was a 100% custodied bank. And she struggled and struggled and struggled to get a Fed Master. Meanwhile, somebody who had somehow, at some point, if I'm misremembering, had been previously affiliated with the Federal Reserve, was able to stand up a bank, because there are very few banks that are actually able to get a Fed Master account. But she's fought like absolutely tooth and nail to fight against the regulatory regime. If you also want to know who was responsible for likely the vast majority of the Bitcoin bills in the greater United States, it's also Caitlin Long. Caitlin Long, amazing lore. 2017, she wants to donate some Bitcoin to the University of Wyoming, where she grew up and went to school. She talks to them, and they say, that sounds great, that would be very nice, but we don't actually have a legal structure that allows us to do that. So what do they have to do? Her and Tyler Lindholm, I believe is his last name, rewrote the laws of the state of Wyoming to make it so that she could donate to the institution that she graduated from. And they passed tens of laws. And essentially, what happens in the legal world is, by and large, people don't want to rewrite laws. If I'm Illinois and I want to write some regulatory schema, or if I'm California, or if I'm Louisiana or wherever, typically what I do is I go and I recycle or I iterate on whatever has already been passed into law. Because I go, if it's good enough for them, like, it's probably a good starting place, right? So if you want to know the reason and a lot of the basis for many of the laws that we have across the United States, it's Caitlin Long's work, tireless, in 2017 when there were not many people doing this, and her work with the state of Wyoming. So much to say. This one, obviously, the trade winds have shifted substantially with the advent of the Trump administration. Trump has been very friendly to Bitcoin. The real risk that we have now, in my perspective, from a perspective of regulatory attack, is that we become too partisan. And what I mean by that is Bitcoin is designed to be non-ideological. It's designed to protect your self-sovereignty. If you love America and the American ideal, you want people to be self-sovereign. You don't only want the people in your particular niche or belief system to be self-sovereign. The idea is that we want to protect other people's rights too. That's the broad scope of freedom. The greater risk is that we don't want to necessarily get full onto a gravy train and say, oh, well, these are the people who like us, so let's just roll with them. Because there is a really strong cohort of progressive Bitcoiners who are also very strongly tied to the research space. And there was some really interesting research that just came out through Troy Cross and the Nakamoto Project. Troy Cross is a philosophy professor out of Reed University or Reed College who started this nonprofit that essentially polls perspectives on Bitcoin to try to understand how does it correlate or track with various demographics. He's trying to kind of type and get demographic understandings of who the hell are these people and how is it changing over time. Very powerful work. What he discovered is that there's bias, obviously, to the right-hand side post-Trump election because he's such a strong advocate. His brand introduced Bitcoin to a lot of people. But what he found was actually a more interesting, something that he called moral maximalism, which is this kind of type that he's trying to understand that really exists in a more powerful way than simple political ideology. So that being said, Troy Cross's work through the Nakamoto Project, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. You can download it. The report went out like a week or two ago, concurrent with the Bitcoin Policy Institute, their recent conference. Ideological attack. Who's seen these? We're going to boil the oceans. What is it? Brandolini's law? That's the name of the law. That like bullshit requires an order of magnitude of non-bullshit to correct it. Is that what it? I don't know if it's actually Brandolini's law. But they got the drop on us, guys. The environmentalists got the drop on Bitcoiners hard. And there were a couple of years where the only research was coming out through DeVries, who works for a central bank, mind you, or it was coming out through various other academically dubious sources, and were eaten up entirely by the media who said, this thing is new, it is strange, here's somebody who doesn't like it, let's go for it. Ideological attacks, very legitimate. And we've gone through very serious regimes where, for a second, the environmental crowd, if we didn't have people like Daniel Batten, who is an incredible advocate on the environmental side of things, sitting on stages with oil and gas aficionados, really showing that this is very much the big tent of Bitcoin. Bitcoin mining has been, in my sense, at this point, successful in really resolving this aspect of FUD. Because you can cite the old papers, but at this point there are enough institutes doing enough work. And I think I saw that France, a legislator in France just put in a proposal, because France is predominantly nuclear, just put in a proposal to utilize Bitcoin mining to consume base load. Amazing. That could not have happened 5 years ago. We used to boil the oceans, now we're saving the whales. And we got the sculpture back. We took it, we appropriated it at the conference. A governance attack. What do I mean by this? This is not a government. Does anybody know the Bitcoin Bugle? I don't want to offend people by talking about communism and Nazis. But the Bitcoin Bugle, it's For the online viewers, an entirely real and legitimate reporting institution that produces the finest work in the journalistic regime in the Bitcoin space. For all of us here, it's a wonderful parody website that reminds everybody they should not be taking themselves too seriously. Recently, there was a very, and still an ongoing debate between, you can see Bitcoin Mechanic, you can see Shinobi, who have been termed the Nazis versus the communists. And these are the two powers that are fighting against each other because they disagree about a policy that I bet none of you can explain in depth. It's the filtering. Can you explain relay policy? Based on the silence, I would say no. It's a real threat. Now, what characterizes this kind of threat? It's a threat of internal dissent. Mom and dad are fighting. Okay, well, am I going to go bone up on computer science so I can understand who I want to live with when the divorce happens? Or is it even really that meaningful? I don't know. It feels existential if these big brains, these people are fighting with each other. Does it pose a legitimate risk to the network? Fundamentally, no. It's a disagreement in relay policy. It's a disagreement in the way that nodes talk to each other and what they allow each other to do or not do. There are already implementations that satisfy what both of these sides think are correct. There is no situation where one side is able to eliminate the other side by hook or by crook. It's not. In the same way that nobody can allow you or disallow you or force you or disallow you to run a node, they cannot tell you what kind of software to run on that node. They can't tell you what kind of software to write. It's an open source project. A node. So a node is essentially a participant in the peer-to-peer network that is Bitcoin. So if you run a node, physically it would be a computer, it would be like a small black box device. It runs the Bitcoin Core software, or Bitcoin not software, but it runs some version of the protocol software. It connects to other nodes, and the entirety of what we talk of as Bitcoin is simply those nodes talking to each other, relaying information about the state of the network. And so this disagreement is simply what's okay or not okay to relay to each other. You can persuade people, but FUD is more powerful, right? To scare people to your side or away from the other side. And the Goldfinger attack. I saved the dumbest for last. The Goldfinger attack, if you see it, you'll know it instantaneously. It's when somebody says, what if, it's also the fussy toddler attack. If somebody has infinite money and infinite power and could control the internet in some way and could control the miners in some way and could subvert the protocol developers in some way, well, then maybe they could kill Bitcoin. The idea is if everything you touch turns to gold, if you don't have the externality of there being a cost to attack the network, then yeah, I could just buy miners and mine a bunch of BS. People like to invoke this when they go, well, what if an infinitely powerful party? And the thing you have to remind them of is that there is no infinitely powerful party. Everyone is constrained by the physics of the thing. If you're gonna run a miner, you have to have access to electricity. If you're gonna do that, you're constrained by the laws of thermodynamics. You can't get 10 megawatts out of a 5 megawatt site. That's not how it works. The Goldfinger attack. Also, intermittently, what my toddler looks like when I didn't let her bring her waffle in the car this morning because she didn't want the blueberries, and she chose to dump all the blueberries out on the counter and lost the privilege of bringing her waffle in the car with her. But that's not my child. That is, believe it or not, an AI image. So what's the remedy to FUD? And this is really what I want you to take away from this, because this is a human problem. This is not like a Bitcoin-specific problem. But as Bitcoiners, we love to think that, we're the star child. It's us. Everyone is thinking about how to destroy us. No, people are just busy. Jim Chanos, legendary short-selling investor, did a wonderful debate with Pierre Rochard, who CEO of the Bitcoin Bond Company, has worked in mining as well, good buddy, brilliant guy. They had a debate. It was kind of debate light. It was two really smart guys respectfully disagreeing with each other. But at one point, Jim Chanos goes, listen, the thing you guys have to remember, and he was legendary for shorting Tesla at one point, he goes, even though we did that, that wasn't more than 5% of my portfolio. Like, I have basically what he was respectfully saying is, I have other shit to do. Like, I don't have time to allocate 100% of my portfolio into shorting your internet thing. It's 5% of my portfolio, man. Like, here's my thesis. You are not the core focus of my entire ideology at this point. And we have to remember that that's fundamentally the case for most people. So what's the remedy? 3 things: fear, uncertainty, doubt, education, experience, community. And this is really the importance of the kind of grassroots work that's happening in a lot of ways: creation of products, the markets that are standing up, the human relationships that are happening. What's the actual way to rebut FUD? The second that somebody comes to you and goes, but like Bitcoin has this problem, there's no conversation to be had. Because there's no curiosity. They already know why it's screwed up. Like if you go to your mechanic and you go, this is wrong, well then there's no mechanicking happening. Like you have to diagnose first. You have to understand what's actually wrong before you start poking at things. And if somebody comes to you and they tell you that like, oh, well, here's the thing that's wrong, well then there's no diagnosing because they're not in a position to actually hear it. What's the resolution to that? The resolution is education. Offer people the specifics, even though it's technical as hell sometimes. Who wants to, I'm not going to go all the way back to the elliptic curve, but you can envision the elliptic curve. The only way to get educated about something or to not be afraid of something is to know what the hell it is. In the same way, if you're camping in the woods and you hear a bump in the night, if you don't know what it is, it's scary. If you turn on the headlamp and you see that it's a gopher or whatever else is bumping around, then you know. So shine some light on the educational side of things. Experience. If you don't know what it means to hold your own keys, if you don't know what it means to transact in Bitcoin, this is why the work that you're doing with getting people to transact in Bitcoin, to use it. If you don't use it, you lose it. If you just sit on your stash and don't touch it, you get rusty and you're going to get angsty because nobody wants to sit on whatever you've been sitting on for 5, 10, 15 years. If you're sitting and just looking at something on a screen and you don't know how to move it, you're lacking experience. I would be uncomfortable if I hadn't had UTXOs flying around the blockchain for too long of a time. Like, oh, is the wallet decayed? Do I still know how to use the wallet? Am I going to put in the wrong information? Am I going to get locked out? Is some other nonsense going to happen? You use it or you lose it. And fundamentally, if you're coming from zero, that's a great place because everything that you touch is new. And finally, community, which I think is the importance of spaces like this. It's the importance of communities like the space. It's the importance of all these meetup groups. Because if you're doubting something, who are you going to talk to about it? You're not going to talk to your grandma about it. You're not going to talk to your parents. You flipped it on me. You got me there. I'm not going to lie. That was a good one. But you need community. That's right. But you have to have it. You have to have it because in the same way that like if you, and this is the big illusion that I think everybody imagines but doesn't quite think through the consequences of, right? I'm going to stack my Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to go to $1 million. And once it goes to $1 million, then I'm going to be loaded. And then you think, well, what are you going to do with the money? Well, I'm going to buy stuff. You're just going to sell your Bitcoin? Well, that's what you have to do, right? I don't know. Do you have people build something? Before it gets to $1 million? You're just going to leave it, like, sitting in your closet, $1 million in your closet? You would do that? Are you going to have, like, a collaborative custody, a multi-sig? Are you going to insure it? Well, I don't know, but I don't know. Say you have 10 Bitcoin. Bitcoin gets to $1 million a coin. You got $10 million sitting in your closet. You're not going to have insurance on it? Like, have you really thought this through, dude? Like, the check from the lotto is just going to show up and you're going to drop it in your Chase account and go about your life? Like, that's not how this works in Bitcoin land. You need community. You need to know what the hell's going on. And if you really think that number is going to go up, you should be thinking about this stuff. This is why all these tools are on inheritance. These tools are on insurance. Even tools tools that have not been built yet, the infamous yield that all are seeking, right? By the time we get to the point where you will feel that you have made it, first off, you probably won't. Second off, you'll realize the things that you thought you needed to buy were probably cheaper than you thought they were. And then you're going to realize you still have life problems, obviously, and money won't have solved those, so hopefully you didn't get your priorities mixed out on the way up. But that being said, what's the only thing that you can rely on? The people, your network, your community. So even as we look around the room, it's one thing to say like, oh, I'm this comfortable, I'm not comfortable, I know a lot, I don't know a lot. Just imagine yourself sitting here with this group of people 10 years from now. Because that's the nature of a relationship of somebody that you would call to ask about this kind of stuff, should number just continue to go up and the FUD not actually come to being. So that's what I want to leave you with. That's what I want you to think about. I appreciate you offering me the microphone and the time to be able to talk about this stuff. And that's it. That's me. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Rob? Anything that's, that he brought up, anything that came into your mind as he was talking? Dirk.
That's a good question. So it's not a question of who needs the energy more. So the question was, who needs the energy more, AI or Bitcoin? Or who wins the energy war? Well, we win the energy war. You and me and every ratepayer where Bitcoin mining or AI becomes fundamental and non-prohibitive to that network. Every one of us gets better electrical grids, cheaper, more and more robust power. And the reason that is because Bitcoin mining and AI are two different kinds of buyers of energy. And we are, funny enough, slightly ahead in the Bitcoin world in understanding the energy world. AI is starting to understand this now. They're starting to understand the problems that you run into. So what are the problems? Well, the first question is, what kind of consumer of energy is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is extremely price sensitive. Extremely price sensitive. Bitcoin is not location sensitive. So if you can get there, you can probably hash there if your cost is cheap enough. So we talked about the oil and gas model. We talked about the large participants in ERCOT, which is a grid model. You also have people that are going out to stranded hydro, loads of stranded hydro in Montana. Or you go over an ocean and you're in Kenya, loads of stranded hydro, way down the dirt road. 5 megawatt, 10 megawatt sites. A company called Gridless Compute does fantastic work where they're taking what are fundamentally dead assets because it's a 10 megawatt, 5 megawatt site where only half a megawatt's being used, where this chicken or the egg problem of the community can't afford to pay 60 cents a kilowatt hour, which is what I have to charge. So they don't get access to the prosperity that is basically baked into that generating asset. Eric Hersman and his team, Philip Walton and the rest, show up and they put a mine on that site and they say, can I buy 60% of your power continuously? Here are my conditions. You have to assure me this certain rate because I'm very price sensitive as a Bitcoin miner. In exchange for that, when you need me to shut down because people start turning the lights on in the community, because inevitably what happens, and they'll tell you this themselves, the second that you monetize one of these dead assets and you throw 50% load onto something that's running at 10%, all of a sudden the price of electricity drops. Because the business that's generating that electricity is all of a sudden capitalized. They have a customer. AI is never going to be on that site. AI wants large, redundant, single sites, and they are willing to pay a lot of money per kilowatt hour, on the order of like 10x, 15x what a Bitcoin miner would be willing to pay. That being said, it's not steady load. It's still subject to like queries. If a bunch of people are querying an AI, that's a heavier GPU load. Bitcoin mining in this sense is actually a little bit better because it's consistent and you can curtail it up and down. On the AI side of things, you're still subject to a customer. When you go in and search something on ChatGPT, you start talking to it, you are having a GPU do something somewhere. For Bitcoin mining, it doesn't need somebody to make an input. It's just working. It's cranking. However, Bitcoin miners are way more price sensitive. So what this means is that we actually have a really powerful tool in the market. We have a customer that's willing to pay a ton, and we have a customer that's willing to pay almost nothing. And what that does in terms of my ability to fully monetize the grid and all the generating assets on the grid means that all of a sudden you have buyers where you otherwise only had people that were turning their lights on and off. So the winner is us. It's really all of us. Good question. What you got? Two manufacturers. Yeah, so mining. Yeah, Bitmain. Mining centralization is a huge issue. Bitmain is actually a great risk and a great example. It's a great example that even a company that has been historically unscrupulous, so Bitmain was on the wrong side of the block size wars. Seems like they have come around. They were on the wrong side of the block size wars. They put software into the machines that was not accessible to the end user. Covert ASIC boost is what it was called. It was discovered when they were creating early versions of firmware for the Bitmain, the S9 machine, when they were poking around to write aftermarket firmware, and they said, that's a series of settings that I didn't know we had. And when they published it, it was not spoken about at the family dinners overseas because they were caught. It was unscrupulous. There are rumors of folks getting machines with a couple of miles on the meter before it actually arrives at their front door. So it's been run. And that's not great, especially when we're at a point now where there are $100 million deals happening between these manufacturers, right? So they're getting paid. Bitmain has the best chip design. Hard stop. They are not an honest, all-American company. Hard stop. They have done things that they have gotten slapped in the face for. 100% true. They have not killed the Bitcoin network. And they can't. And they won't, because they're not going to kill the golden goose. That being said, chip production is coming to the US. Not necessarily foundry production. The big constraint globally is foundry space. You're not just competing with Bitcoin miners, you're competing with NVIDIA, and you're competing with Microsoft and ChatGPT and everybody else, OpenAI, everybody else that wants to go get huge allocations of chips. So you have to be big to play, and Bitmain is big enough to play, and not everybody else is. So they get a price advantage there. They get an economy of scale. The chip design they're really, really good chip designers in the US. Intel was doing some project in chip design. There's a couple of other, I'm blanking on the name of the guys. There was just an acquisition. Mara invested in Auradine, which is a California-based chip developer. We have an open source project based out of Nashville called the 256 Foundation, whose sole purpose is to open source everything in the proprietary mining empire because it's too closed source right now. So it is a huge issue. Yes, it is a recognized issue, and it is an issue where there is, in the same way that the quantum attack, there's lots of impetus to solve it. There's tons of impetus to solve it, and there are very smart people that now are building and have the tools to actually hack on it. What you got? Oh, it's such a good question. Well, why would I run a node? Yeah, privacy, verify my own transactions. When you look at the custody landscape, should you expect that everybody is going to custody all of their coins on a Tor-protected, triple VPN, lockdown in your basement server rack where you have the keys? No, it's just not going to happen. It's the reason the iPhone is the most successful, selling consumer device of all time, right? Because they made it simple. They said, we're going to do all the not sexy stuff, and we're going to make it really good, but we're going to hide it inside a black box, and you just get the user experience. So it's not realistic to assume that everybody's going to do that. I know that is like verboten, right? But it's the truth. It's the reality. When you look at the custody landscape, if you want to maintain privacy over your transactions, and I think people should, right? I think simply from the perspective of learning about the Bitcoin network and how it works, you should run a node. Because what you are doing is you are saying, I'm going to run the Bitcoin software. I'm going to have my own version of all the blocks that are on the blockchain. I will be able to verify that. I don't have to trust any third party. And I can submit transactions to the network from my living room or my basement through my own router. That's incredibly empowering. That's incredibly sovereign. You can't do an ACH from your bathtub. You know, like you lack the infrastructure. You can't do a Swift payment, while you're cooking dinner or something. But you can do a Bitcoin transaction through a self-sovereign node, which is amazing. So from a learning perspective, yes, that's the thing that we run the risk of people forgetting if they don't understand what they're doing. Even having your own keys. I have my own hardware wallet. I'm not going to dox you and ask who has a hardware wallet. But you have a hardware wallet. Most people who have a hardware wallet are maybe using some version of that hardware wallet software. And when you use that, sure, you are signing your own transactions, but you're not using your own node. You are connecting to your hardware wallet provider's node. So you're connecting to their version of Bitcoin. You're not using your version of Bitcoin. Now, the hope is that they're not being unscrupulous. They're not doing something sketchy. They find out who you are and they decide, you kind of suck. We don't want you to transact anymore. And every time they see you submit a transaction, they go, nah, forget that guy. It's a risk of censorship. Or other unscrupulous things that could be done. So just from that perspective, you should run a node, if not for simply the sake of learning. Start9, which is a local company, makes a great piece of kit. Umbral makes a great piece of kit. You could buy an old laptop and flash it yourself. I think that's a pretty cool way to do it. Go to an estate sale and buy a $30 laptop, delete all of grandma's files, and then load up a version of Bitcoin Core, or NOTs, or whatever implementation that you want. You can do that. It's cool, and it's empowering in that kind of way. I'm very much Switzerland on it, to be honest with you. Because I actually understand, I think everyone's talking past each other in a really funny kind of way, where ideologically, Luke Dasher, does everybody know who Luke Dasher is? Developing on Ocean, brilliant guy, primary author of SegWit, right? Helped resolve the block size wars, essentially. Luke Dasher is brilliant, and my personal belief is that I don't think he's not a bad actor. And if anything, he has proven himself to consistently be a very, very ideologically driven, good actor. Now, that doesn't mean that what he's saying is what people are necessarily going to do. That's just the nature of disagreement. But it doesn't make him a bad actor. And the way that you know that, because I tried to do some research into finding, we had this op-return debate. The question was, well, what kind of data can people put on chain that is non-monetary data? And inside of the Coinbase transaction, there's actually a chunk of data. It's 80 bytes, and it's called SIG script. And you can put in information if you are a miner. That's often like identifying information, right? I found a block. I have this 80 bytes to use. So you can put all kinds of additional information in there, right? It's multi-use. It was designed with that in mind, that you could put information there. When I was trying to find out what are the first cases of people putting non-monetary information into Bitcoin, what's the first one? It's the Genesis block. And in the SIG script, you have Chancellor on the brink. Then it goes very quiet for a very long time, for a number of years. And then you get this one very bizarre transaction that I have not figured out yet. And then 2 months later, you get Luke Dasher. But he's not signing his name. He's signing Eligius. Who is that? It's a good guess. Eligius. Who is this? His mistress. No. Well, it's It's a man that has been dead for many hundreds of years. Is the patron saint of goldsmiths. Luke is a devout Catholic. And goldsmiths. Also, the guys who repaired horse carts. Cartwrights? Yeah, I think the term was cartwright. Patron saint of watchmakers, and a few other assorted things. And you think, okay, put yourself in Luke Dasher's shoes. You have 175 IQ. You're playing around with Bitcoin. You're mining it. What compels you to sign your blocks Eligius? And the part that I forgot to say is he starts putting Latin prayers in it. Why the hell would you do that? Is this something a bad actor does? I don't think so. I can't be in the dude's head. But I think to myself, okay, this guy is mining Bitcoin. He's writing Bitcoin. And the first thing he does when he's hitting these blocks is praise to his God. Okay, so probably not somebody who's going to try to take the money and run, if we can make some assumption that he's devout and adhering to his religious beliefs. And names his what then became Eligius Pool after the patron saint of goldsmiths, who, if you read about him, became sainted or whatever the term, beatified, is that the term? Is that the right term? Okay. I'm Jewish, so I'm just guessing at the Catholic stuff, okay? I'll have to. This guy was the one guy who the king at the time would allow to work on his stuff, because it was the one guy who didn't care about the gold. And he would make these beautiful things for the king. And as a result of it, the king knew he was honest. He knew that he wouldn't steal the tiniest gram from him in the creation of anything that he wanted created. So he just kept giving him more work. And he just kept paying him better and better. And what did he do with all his money? Well, you don't get sainted by becoming, Andrew Tate and getting super rich, right? You get that by giving it away. And he was reputed to go down to the market and buy slaves, 50 or 100 at the time, and basically say, listen, you're free, congrats. I will pay for you to get back on a boat and go home, or pay for you to stay, or pay for you to join the clergy, because he's Catholic, so he wants people to be Catholic, right? It's reasonable. And so he would do this. He would go to the market, he'd buy 50, 100 slaves at a time, and he would do this, and he got sainted. So I really don't think that Luke Dasher is a bad actor. And I don't think he's a bad actor because I don't think somebody is compelled to invoke somebody who took on the great responsibility of gold to the degree that they became eminently wealthy from it and then chose to give it away and do good in the name of their religious beliefs. I don't really think that person's trying to dick us over. And this person was also doing it at a time when how much media press was Bitcoin getting in 2011? Like how many paid maintainer roles were there? How many stages were you there to speak on and go flex your narcissism and become popular? Like, dude was doing it for the love of the game. He was doing it because it was interesting technology, as the very famous video of him being interviewed by a very confused young Japanese woman. But he said it himself, it's interesting technology. So that being said, what's the core debate? The core debate, I'm imagining the Nazis' core, whatever. You know what the picture looks like. Core is fundamentally trying to kind of solve a different problem. There are a number of kind of affiliated entities that fund developers that work on the project. And what they're trying to do is harden the project so that it continues to live, because these are legacy software developers who really want to build out all the architecture that allows you to harden this technology. They're building out fuzz testing. Does anybody know what fuzz testing is? So there's a guy, his name escapes me, but they're building out fuzz testing for code, which is essentially you build tests that you can run where you kind of spit semi-coherent data into the code that you actually want to eventually validate, and you wait for it to break the code. So you give it a bunch of inputs that look mostly right, but something is off. And so you kind of do this fuzzy testing where you might hit it 10,000 times with all sorts of data that's 99.9% right. and you're just waiting for something to break. Okay, that's what an institution does. That's what somebody does when they're trying to protect trillions and trillions of dollars. And it's wonderful that we have that. So I don't know that Core is a bad actor either. So I don't know that the debate is really coherent to say that this person is doing something at the disgrace of Bitcoin, or this person is doing something at disgrace of Bitcoin. I fundamentally just think they're trying to do two different things. And the thing about Bitcoin is that everybody thinks they have the same cute puppy, but the nature of a decentralized peer-to-peer network is that not only you and all your best friends get to use it, but everyone you hate gets to use it too. And that's kind of the nature of the beast. The nature of the beast is that we're all stuck on the island together, so to speak, and you don't have to get along. But understand that people are doing this because they have a best interest in mind. So don't necessarily assume that they're trying to destroy our favorite thing. That was a very expansive answer, but I appreciate the question. All right, anything else? You've been eminently patient and great listeners, so I really appreciate you guys coming out. Oh, sure. So Bitcoin Park is a blast. It is a community of builders, entrepreneurs, executives, creators in the space. And we facilitate essentially forums by which folks are able to get together in really high quality, ultra high signal curated environments. So we currently operate not just out of Nashville, Tennessee, which is the first campus, but also out of Austin, Texas. So we recently acquired what was previously Bitcoin Commons. And that's been fantastic out of Austin. Amazing community out there. So what you probably see immediately coming out from us is a whole bunch of information products. So live streaming, we just had the Austin Bitcoin Design Club live streaming like some live demos of some products that they're working through. We have the ongoing like vibe coding sessions coming out of Austin. We have our meetups coming out of both spaces coming out. Anything that's basically happening in the space, any opportunity that we get to turn that into something that can be additive to the broader community. We're operating under the thesis that we don't just want this really high signal environment to be trapped in a single space, right? So we also do summits upcoming. We have September 17th, 18th, we have the Custody and Treasury Summit, which the waitlist, I think, for that just opened. That's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a couple of days of some of the heaviest hitters in the space and a set of organized talks going through really the state of the art in Bitcoin custody on this sort of like discrete product side. And then the treasury side is a lot obviously related, but more sort of like strategic, forward-looking. After that, we actually have this first of its kind project called Imagine If, which is the confluence of AI, energy, and Bitcoin, essentially freedom technologies. And this is really the culmination of all the summits that have happened at the park. It's going to be 3 stages in Nashville, Tennessee, September 20th, 21st, so right after the Custody Treasury Summit. That one's going to be really fun because we have some pretty heavy hitters confirmed. A couple I can't announce, but I can announce that it's in partnership with ARK Invest, so Kathy Wood's going to be out there. And then if you know who Art Laffer is, creator of the Laffer Curve, going to be giving a talk with Kathy. Fantastic. This caliber of folks, the premise is that it's kind of almost TED Talk style. So innovators in the space, the stage is yours. You have X number of minutes. You're going to give us your vision of the world. And it's going to be pretty heavy hitting. I'm actually very, very excited about it because it's an extension of this thesis. Like, the first thing I think we had to do in Bitcoin is just figure out, who, when the zombie apocalypse comes, you have to figure out who's human. So like that's kind of what I feel like we've been doing for the last couple of years, right? Like who's human? Like where is it safe to congregate? Okay. Now the stage we're getting to is, okay, we're getting a sense of knowing where the high signal places are to congregate. Now we need to really reintroduce and continue to reintroduce ourselves to the broader world. Because I keep pointing like any FUD that exists out there, we no longer have the excuse of not having the intellectual horsepower to actually be able to have conversations with these people. Folks who are otherwise highly intelligent, but Bitcoin to them is, if not 5% of their portfolio, it's 1% of their brain. I mean, us, we would dream to be in a moment where It wasn't 95% of our brain, right? But for most people, it's 1% of their brain, right? I use my wife as the counter indicator. So I always know like when a bull market is getting too hot, because then she sees the story. So I intermittently ping her. I'm like, hey, have you seen anything about Bitcoin recently? No, what's going on? Nothing. Apparently nothing. But that's the reality of space. How do we introduce ourselves to the broader world with folks who are curious, but have their own vision of the world? And how do we participate in that vision of the world? Yeah. Late September. Oh, this is, they do this, I don't know that it's weekly or every couple of weeks out of Austin. They have some really great guys that run, they have a great bit devs, first off, fantastic bit devs out of Austin. They have Justin Sun. I don't want to say the wrong Justin. I said the wrong Justin. There's another Justin. Oh, maybe it's Justin Moon. I don't know. Clearly I've botched this one. But his first name is Justin. And when you know it and it's not Tron, then you'll know it's real. They essentially are a bunch of guys who are developers who run a periodic meetup where they're showing people like best practices and how to utilize various aspects of AI as well as do it while vibe coding. So it's actually pretty cool because they're all sort of developers by day and playing with these tools by night. So they've done stuff on like, various interfaces to use. They've done stuff on like MCP. Of course, all that went extinct because then all of a sudden got just like integrated into the front ends of everything. But like they're very much on the state of the art, like poking around with stuff. And it's a super accessible group where there's like technical and non-technical people. You can kind of come and go and ask questions at will. Very informative, especially because the space is moving so quickly. If Tyler was here, we could throw elbows. No, it's fun. The nature of the game is that you need more spaces, right? Like you need the space. You need Presidio Bitcoin, who just had their like quantum day like today or yesterday. You need Stephen DeLorme, Atlanta Bit Labs. We hosted Grassroots Bitcoin, where we brought 100-something meetup organizers from all over the world who came to the Park Nashville. And that was designed essentially as a way to get all of these organizers in the same room so that you could talk about the kind of problems that you run into. Because everyone's running in the same crap, like how do I get a building? Like who do I talk to? How do I lend it? How do I manage the building? How do I manage the space? How do I manage my event? Like it's all the same questions. So the nature of the game right now is like, we got to make the pie bigger. Like we have like no business, and at least in my perspective, like we have no business with any kind of like infighting or nonsense. Like our core mission should be like make the pie bigger. And it's going to be honestly decades. We have decades of work ahead of us. Great job security.
How would you convince the international companies B2B why should they use Bitcoin?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't convince them.
No, but what is an argument for them to use Bitcoin?
What are their problems? Like in my perspective, there's only really two reasons that you use Bitcoin. And I think it has divided based on really the GDP of where you live. So there's two reasons to use Bitcoin, to be into Bitcoin, because you're greedy or because you have to. So that kind of puts you into two camps, right? I would say maybe there's a third that's emerging because you're preservationist, because you don't like to be robbed, right? You want to save. But definitely, when I was getting into Bitcoin early days, it was because you were greedy or because you had to. And the number of people who were the Pierre Richard's true like Austrian economics, distributed systems understanders, you could have fit those dudes in an elevator. There were very few people getting into it. You wanted number to go up, so it was a speculative asset. And then the freedom kind of came with it. Then you figured out, oh, dang, this is actually freedom money. Or, as Alex Gladstein and the Human Rights Foundation have found out, there are people who can only continue to do what they do because of Bitcoin. The way that they were introduced to Bitcoin was because there were a number of Ukrainian dissidents who had been blocked out of, I'm going to botch it, I think it was either Ukrainian or Russian, but I believe it was Ukrainian, but I know that they've worked with folks on both sides because they have worked with Russian journalists. It was a bunch of Ukrainian dissidents who the only way that they could fund themselves was through Bitcoin because they were entirely locked out of the local banking system. And that is what really orange-pilled a lot of the folks at the Human Rights Foundation, and they become massive, massive advocates of it and have a really interesting tool that they launched a couple of months ago, the CBDC tracker, which I highly recommend. Also, Russia just introduced the digital ruble, which is supposed to go live September of next year, so keep your eyes on that because it's no bueno. But fundamentally, what's the question? Like, if I'm a business, why do I need Bitcoin? I don't know. Do you like being robbed by inflation? Like,
Why don't you go to the Thai business and take Bitcoin, right? I neither from Ukraine nor I'm a fraudster, but I want to do this instead of using dollar.
yeah.
I want to use Bitcoin. So my question was basically, what is good for me here in Denver? Is there any argument that can be made this is also good for B2B business internationally?
Yeah, but
This was the question. Yeah, is there
I think there is, but I don't think that I can convince anybody that there is a use case because, I mean, there's loads of folks who are using various international suppliers that settle in Bitcoin or stable coins or whatever other sort of unmonitored cryptocurrency. Like, there's remittance things. Like, there's all sorts of really good reasons why. Oh, totally. It's not within. I think that I'm probably about as hardcore Bitcoin maximalist as you could find, but I am not. I'm becoming less and less a believer that hyper Bitcoinization is going to be a thing that happens in years, and I'm becoming more of a believer that hyper Bitcoinization is going to be a thing that happens in decades. And the reason for that, I think, is because I personally. I don't know how successful you can be if you try to go convince people who have free credit cards and access to ultra cheap fiat money that something that is very obviously more difficult to use is a better option. I think we have a thesis on what we think is going to happen. We understand what inflation looks like. Nobody likes to be robbed. That's a good enough reason to save in Bitcoin. But I think that fundamentally, if you're going to go through all the stages of Bitcoin is the thing that it's not a speculative asset, it's the thing I save in, and it's the thing I save in for a long term. Okay, well, to do that, you have to hold it for a long term. And to be successful at that, yeah, the number might go up, but Bitcoin hasn't become a hardcore medium of exchange. Well, what has to happen for Bitcoin to be a medium of exchange? It has to be as easy to use as me pulling out my tap and pay or my phone pay, and it's not. So how long does that happen? Well, it doesn't happen necessarily in years. It happens in a decade. Okay, well, how long does it take after that for Bitcoin to become the unit of account? And by that we mean I'm not pricing things in dollars anymore. I'm pricing things in Satoshis. Well, you have these sort of necessary preconditions, which are like, if I want Bitcoin to be seen as a kind of reserve asset, even though I know it's more than that, that's going to take a couple of years. If I want it to be seen as this way to transact, a medium of exchange, it's going to take a couple more years. And there's another truth to it, which is that like most people over the age of like 55, 60, it'd be very hard to convince them that they should learn how to use a new remote on their TV under the auspices of protecting their money. It's very hard to convince people who are just retired or recently retired that they should put all their money into a speculative asset. So in some sense, it might be 10, 15 years until you get a cohort of people that are really diehard, unit of exchange savers in Bitcoin. There was no net 30. There was no chargeback. So here's a question I have, right? Service fees 3.5% typically. It adds up. It adds up. Are there, here's a question, are there types of businesses, maybe businesses that use a lot of factoring, right, who are highly sensitive to fees and highly sensitive to settlement? Like who's the prime mover?
I got to chime in on this because our next meetup is going to be on this very thing. Our next meetup is going to be the 2-year anniversary of South Denver Bitcoin. Our next meetup is going to be on my birthday, which that's probably the most important thing, August 14th. And the speaker is going to be none other than me. And I'm going to be basically using you guys as guinea pigs to tell me what's wrong with my presentation, because I'm going to give that presentation to 150 dentists in Tuscaloosa, Alabama on the 22nd. And as we've, I'm Mark Lane. And so,
I'm the one that's working with the dentist in town, my relative, my son.
we've been on the orange pill. Okay, yeah. We'll have them come to our next one. Yeah.
I need to get her to come.
Yes, yes.
So when I saw her at church the other day, she's out here with her 4th child, and she just started doing this rant. She goes, "I got a plan so bad. I got an accountant. I'm a mom of 4 kids.
Yeah.
And I'm running a dentistry business. So the last thing she wants to think about is accepting Bitcoin. But maybe I could pull some.
Yeah. Well, to Rob's point, nobody gets Bitcoin until they either need it or they want it. I mean, it's basically, yeah. But unlike Rob thinks that there's only two reasons that people come to Bitcoin. Mark thinks that there's only 2 types of people in the whole world. People who love Bitcoin and people who don't know yet that they love Bitcoin. And so the reason I jumped in is I really was looking for a moment because I think I would, first of all, I appreciate the fact, I just emailed Rob. I said, hey, would you do this? And he immediately did that. And I want you to know, I mean, this is high quality stuff. And I know that for some of us, because, the hard thing about speaking, and I know you know this, probably better than most, about speaking to a Bitcoin audience is in this room, you have people that could literally probably code Bitcoin, okay? And then you have somebody who is maybe just here for the first time, doesn't know anything about Bitcoin, okay? And you're trying to include everybody, okay? And that is not an easy thing to do. And so there may have been some things that Rob was talking about tonight that just seemed like way out of your galaxy, okay? As one of my great aunts once said, honey, I'm so old, I forget what I forgot. So Rob has so much information that he forgets what he forgot. But the fact of the matter is, he's speaking to an audience that's so diverse, it's very difficult to really reach everybody. I can tell you that next week's, I'm creating this presentation with that knowledge in hand. It is intended not for somebody with any great amount of education at all in Bitcoin. So I would encourage you to come to that, okay? But I think most importantly, and what I need to say right now is thank you. How about a round of applause for this guy? Freaking amazing. Now, Rob got the incredible honorarium of $0 for coming tonight. And so I feel it's really important that I give you something, okay? So I have this T-shirt. Now, only people who present at the meetup get this T-shirt.